Okay, welcome everyone to today's webinar, Introduction to Opsgenie and Statuspage. My name is Sean Pinney, I'm on the product marketing team, and I'm joined by Kate Clavitt. Kate, how are you?
Good, you?
Doing well, doing well. So we're gonna jump right in today. A couple of housekeeping items before we do. This webinar is being recorded, and we're gonna email it out to you, so no need to scribble notes unless you absolutely want to. We'll send you a recording in the next day or so. And also there's a chat box on the right-hand side in the GoToWebinar box. Please ask questions anytime you like. And the basic ones we can definitely answer live on the air, and then anything else that takes more detail, we'll definitely follow up with you offline to make sure that any and all questions are answered in the follow-up. So we're gonna spend most of our time in a demo here today, but what we wanted to do quickly before that is talk a little bit about where Opsgenie came from, the problem we set out to solve, and also talk a little bit more about Statuspage, as this is another feature, another product that we want to make sure you're aware of. So back when the company was started, 7 or 8 years ago, we saw the problem. We saw that IT and dev stacks were becoming more and more complex. Companies were moving to the cloud, hybrid solutions were popping up, with continuous delivery systems and SaaS. People were shipping code more often, more regularly, quicker, faster, et cetera. And what they needed to do to keep all that working is to put monitoring tools in place, tools like Datadog, New Relic, et cetera. And all those tools are great, and Opsgenie integrates with most of them. The only problem is if you just integrate a bunch of tools, you end up with a lot of email, a lot of one-way communication, which can quickly overwhelm your operational team. And that's what we saw. We saw the signal to the noise ratio was way out of whack. Important notifications were missed. Team members didn't receiving non-relevant alerts, and alert fatigue kind of set in across the team. And we saw it ourselves with the very own tools that we were using. So at the very least, you can think of Opsgenie as sitting between, at the very basics, you can kind of see Opsgenie sitting between those monitoring tools and your dev or your IT ops teams. And on the back end, we do lots of great reporting, which we'll talk about in today's demo. So Opsgenie sits there in the middle and does a really good job once you get it set up of telling you, of routing alerts properly using our rules engine, our integrations that we're going to show you, and making sure the right people are getting alerted at the right time. And the bare bones basics of alerting and on-call management, that's what you need. You need to make sure that that's happening, and that's the core value promise of Opsgenie. On the incident management side, if you're thinking a little bit larger, alerts lead to incidents, bigger issues, bigger outages. There's a bunch of things that need to be considered quickly when you're thinking about in the traditional sense of like who should be alerted, when, how, has the alert been acknowledged, has it been escalated? All of that stuff can be taken care of through the setup of your Opsgenie account and thinking about the services that your company works with, whether it's Twilio or any other service that runs a portion of your business or your app, with the teams that are responsible for those tools, and then making sure those teams are alerted when issues do arise. So the benefits of this is, like the main one is reducing the noise associated with tools, allowing those events. This is another big one that we do, consolidating, categorize, deduplicating all in one location, and also communicating that message across different tools. Only the correct people are notified at the right time. Everything is recorded and reported on, which we'll talk about in the reporting section of the demo. In addition to just monitoring tools, obviously chat ops tools, Slack being the big one, have been heavily adopted. Ticketing systems, project management solutions are in place. So in the modern environment, you've got Opsgenie in the middle, but you've also got Slack, you've got Jira, you've got maybe Service Desk or a Zendesk, you name it. There's many different tools out there. Basically any tool under the sun that you might integrate with in your day-to-day world, Opsgenie can be integrated with, and you can, in many cases, sync that information in multiple and bidirectionally, so it's up to date no matter where your teams are working. So again, you're providing all that on-call and alert management in one spot. You're synchronizing the information and enabling people to take action within chat environments and reporting and analyzing, like I mentioned. And also, this is a big one, as Kate's going to talk about, being able to communicate out to your customers and to the external public with a Statuspage integration. So everyone involved, from your customer all the way to your CEO and everyone in between, has the same message at the same time. And that's really the holy grail that we're aiming for. So with that, we're going to dive into a little bit more information about Statuspage, and we're going to dive into the actual product. And I'm going to pass things over to Kate for that portion of the presentation. So Kate, I'll make you the presenter here in a second. Okay.
All right. Let's see. Can you share my? Sorry. Can you see my screen yet? No.
Not yet.
Okay. Let me see here. Oh. Okay. Now you can see it.
Yeah, you can see. Yeah, we're on the slide deck. Yep.
All right. Let me play this properly so you can see the full screen.
Yep. Looks
great.
Good.
Thanks for that good setup. Sorry for the little hiccup there. Today's demo, I think, is going to be a lot of fun. Usually we go through Opsgenie, through all the sections of Opsgenie, and we talk about integrations in a brief sense, but today we're going to use that time to demo the integration with Statuspage. But first, just in case you're new to Statuspage, we want to give you a little background about it. So essentially, Statuspage is a communication tool that helps you inform your users and also your internal team about outages and scheduled maintenance. It runs on your domain with your branding, which is key. You can really make sure that it's recognizable for folks from your brand perspective. Statuspage really helps you keep all of your users informed about what's going on with your product. Are you scheduling maintenance? Is an issue happening at this moment? Is there an incident? What's the current status, etc. So your customers are always informed about what's happening, and it also alleviates stress of your support team and of the rest of your teams on having to communicate during these times when things are going very quickly and they're very engrossed in fixing them. My slide is not changing. Oh, here we go. So Statuspage offers 3 main page types. They have a public page for end users and customers. There's a private internal page for your organization communications. You can also integrate your private internal with different ticketing tools. Zendesk is a good example. And then also we have the access piece as well. Statuspage is key because it does reduce that burden on support, and it also builds trust with your customers. They know that they can trust you to be upfront and honest with them when something is going wrong and keep them informed. Another thing to note is that you can add third-party components of services that you rely on, and that sort of touches on the Opsgenie and Statuspage external services that we'll also talk about today. And let me just exit, and we're going to go into the actual demo portion. Let me just open up my Opsgenie now. So I will say we're doing this demo of Statuspage. However, I'm not a Statuspage expert. So if there are any questions that you ask today that we cannot answer, we'll certainly go through those and make sure you get the proper answer once the webinar is concluded. So let's get started on the Opsgenie demo, and when we get to integrations, we'll incorporate the Statuspage piece. So when you log into Opsgenie, the first thing that you see is the alerts dashboard, and that's because most folks are coming into Opsgenie to actually take action on an alert. So typically that's why that's the first thing that you see, to sort of make your use more simple. But the organizational lifeblood of Opsgenie is the team. So here's where you would go to create a team, and that's sort of where everything in Opsgenie is built around. Integrations are built around your team, alerts, etc. Everything's built around team and notifying that team. So the first thing you would do is create a team. I've already created one, but we could just, we'll call this test team so you can see how that works. And then you can add in a description of that team and add users by searching through folks that are within Opsgenie already. So there's main types of users would be admin or user. The user pretty much has visibility on everything. The admin really has those rights in terms of setting up the structure and determining how things are mapped. Users typically have the ability to take action on alerts. So we're going to go into my DevOps team that I've already created. You also can set custom roles for your team members if that's something that you'd like to do within your organization. So that's something to note. One of the great things about Opsgenie, we tend to keep these demos pretty high level because it is a lot of information in a short period of time. But there is a lot of flexibility within Opsgenie to really tailor how you set it up to your organization and your organization's needs. So that's just something to keep in mind as we move through this demo, that we're really just kind of high leveling it here. So once you click into your team, you have all your information here, your on-call schedules, etc. So what you want to do first in order to get a functional Opsgenie instance set up is set up integrations. So Opsgenie has over 200 integrations with various tools that are pre-built. But we can also integrate using API, email, and we can pretty much accept anything that sends JSON, HTTPS, or as a last resort, you can use an email integration. When you access an integration from within a team, you are automatically assigning that team that particular integration. So any alerts that have to do with that integration will be sent to that team. So let's say I already have a Statuspage integration set up, but let's look for Statuspage, and then you would just click Add. So every integration has an advanced tab and a simple setup tab. So this is the simple setup, and the purpose of this simple setup is to get you set up as quickly as possible. The advanced tab provides you with a lot more granular control of that integration, but a lot of our integrations do have action mapping. For example, our Statuspage integration has action mapping here. One thing to note that I think is really key specifically about this integration is that you have the option here. So certainly for alerts that are created, you want to make sure that you're only communicating really high priority alerts to your status page. You don't want P4 or P5 informational alerts going to your status page, typically, especially if it's an external facing status page. So down here, you want to use this alert filter to match these conditions. So in my case, I want the priority to always equal P1 critical. And then another thing that you can do that a lot of our customers tend to ask about and don't totally realize is that you can add other actions. So a very common action here is create an incident and update the components/incident statuses according to tags. And this is useful because you can create an alert policy, which we'll go through later, that will automatically add tags to certain alerts based on your specifications, which then means that your status page can automatically be updated. So what I would do from here is save the integration, but I am going to take you to look at the integration that I already have set up because I want to show you the advanced tab, and I also would like to show you the integration that I have set up there because I have set that to some specific specifications. So let's go to my status page integration here. So you see this is all set up. And then down here, I do have that tag. If a tag is added, create an incident for these tags, and then you can enter those tags. This touches on what I meant with the alert policies that you can set up to automatically. So let's just say critical for this. And then alert filter, match all conditions below. Priority equals P1. and then I click Save. But let's just go to the Advanced tab so I can show you kind of that granular control you have there. And I also would like to touch on the alias field. So essentially, you can add different tags here. You can add information just by dragging and dropping. So that's already in there. Incident created at. So this will fill out the message field when the alert's created. The alias is key. So what Opsgenie does to prevent the duplication of alerts is we utilize the alias field. So this means that when an alert is created, there's an alias created with that alert. If multiple alerts for the same, if multiple of the same alerts are created, the alias field is used to deduplicate that alert. So instead of sending you 5 identical alerts, what Opsgenie will do is it will increase the count of that alert. And that's something, when we go through the alerts dashboard in a bit, I'll show you there. Okay, so this is all set, and let's save the integration. Okay, and let's go back here, integrations, make sure that this is all set. It is. And now what we'll do is, this is my status page here. We're going to, these are alerts that came through earlier. We're going to create an alert. Obviously, this is a manual alert creation, but this would typically be created from a monitoring tool or something else that you've integrated with Opsgenie. We're just creating it manually here for the purpose of the demo. Okay, so we will create this alert. And then let us go back, status page. So when you set up, I just want to show you the back end of the status page. So I have to relog in. Let's just go to statuspage.io and then log in. They do offer a free trial, and I highly recommend you give that a shot. So when you log in, this is what the interface looks like from the back end. Today, for the sake of time, I'm just going to demonstrate the external facing status page, which is the customer facing one. But certainly there are a lot of great materials on Statuspage's website, and then also within the community that will explain all of the different features you can really take advantage of from Statuspage. One thing that you do in order to set up the Opsgenie integration is create a webhook here, which you can see, of course, I've already done just for the sake of brevity. And then another great thing is you can add various components. So for example, if you know that you use HubSpot for your external facing website, you can add that to your public status page, and it can automatically show up there for you and save you some time if there's an issue there, etc. So let's go to view page. Okay, and so you can see that these are from incidents earlier. Essentially, the alert created this particular issue. And so you can see here that a status page has updated that page. Another thing to note about status page, this one I simply created for this demo, but you can also view historical uptime on the stat, where your customers can view historical uptime on that page. They can also see when scheduled maintenance is coming up, etc. So it's really helpful in this way, and it just saves you time to automatically update that. So let us close this alert, and we'll go back to the status page, the customer facing one, and view that. And maybe we'll take a second in order to resolve. Okay, and so this shows you, sorry, my internet is a bit slow, and I also had to close both of those alerts in order to get this to work. So what happens is here, it shows you that the issue is resolved and the fix has been pushed, etc. The system acknowledged the alert, which means that Opsgenie has acknowledged it. And then this is closed, meaning that, of course, the alert's closed and theoretically the issue is resolved. So this is just a very high level basic view of how the integration between Opsgenie and Statuspage works. If you are using Statuspage for an actual customer facing product, you want to be a little bit more specific with your notes here, but it's just something to note, and we just wanted to simply demonstrate that for you. So before we move through the rest of the demo, I do want to touch on external services in Statuspage. This is something that we've added since our acquisition with Atlassian. So thanks to our seamless integration with Statuspage, you can add external services. So all you need to do is access services and then select external service, and you can search for something. So let's do Twilio, for example. And then you have the option here to filter into specific components of Twilio, depending on what it needs to be on your radar. But I'm just going to do all of them just for the sake of this demo. And then you can determine what Twilio has to do, like maybe use Twilio for internal conference bridges. And then you can tag the service as applicable. And you can determine the visibility. So if you want just your direct team to know about this, you can do it private to team, or if you want it to be public to the organization. In this case, I will just make it private to Kate's DevOps team and click add. So now what will happen is you'll get an alert whenever there is any sort of informational Twilio notification, or if there's an outage, you're going to get that alert automatically. And so that's available for any external services that are using public-facing status pages. So HubSpot has one, for example. You can add that. I think Shopify has one. So you have a lot of different options, and this is great because it means that you can get alerts and get notified automatically, and you can just see all of this as well from your Opsgenie interface without having to go to those individual status pages. And then you can create automatic updates to your own public-facing or internal status page that let people know when these things are happening. So this is an example again of an integration that you can set up. It took me only a few moments. I'm sure there will be questions on this later since we went through it kind of quickly. But from here, let's go through to our team and talk about how exactly you set up these on-call schedules and escalation policies. So the first thing that you want to do once you get your team set up is you're going to want to set up an on-call schedule. So the on-call schedule determines essentially who's going to be responding to these alerts, etc. So one thing that works well for a lot of people is that you can also manage the on-call schedule from your phone. So the mobile app allows you to make changes as well. A lot of times people are, when they're on call, they're on the run. So let me just show you real quick how to do that. If you just hover over this person's shift right here and override it, maybe Sean needs a break. It automatically populates this user here, but if it needs to be somebody else, I can add someone else to take over. And then I can also select the time zone, etc., and when it starts and ends. So that's all set. And so now you'll see this final schedule here. Cameron is taking over for Sean. A lot of customers will work out of the Teams page because this is where you're managing everything related to your team and on-call schedule. So This is why we've sort of made everything so team-centric and really organized everything around the team, because doing this ensures that alerts are going to people who can actually respond and who are actually working and on call. A common problem is alerts go to folks who are not available, they're not in their own working hours, or they're not on call, and then that is really what causes that delay and that customer pain for you. So this is a way to get around that. And of course, when you're creating a new team, this schedule will be blank, and you would just create your own, of course. But let's delete these rotations, and I will create a new one. It's very simple. Another common application for folks, especially now that 24-hour support is so important to a lot of folks with the rise of always-on services, is creating a follow the sun schedule. But you can, of course, set up your rotation any way you like, whether that be daily, weekly, or custom. Follow the sun is pretty typically a custom schedule. But for the sake of brevity, I'm just going to do daily, and I'll do myself, and then I'll add Sean, and let's add. So different agency organizations, of course, do it differently. You can also end a schedule or restrict it to time intervals. So maybe you want to have someone just working the off hours, and we'll say that's. So that you can set that up so that way they're only working on off hours. So if I'm the one that's going to be on call overnight, this will be my schedule, and we'll restrict it to this time, and then I'll get the alerts, etc. during that time every day. And add. So that's all set. The other great thing about this calendar is that you can pause certain rotations if you like. You can download it. You can export it to Google or Outlook, which makes it really easy to share. And so it's just pretty simple. And again, you can act on this from the mobile app as well, which makes the functionality a lot easier, especially if something comes up unplanned. So the next thing we're going to talk about are routing rules and escalation policies. And so they work hand in hand with everything else in here in order to make sure that people are getting alerts, the right people are getting alerts at the right time. So this is a pretty basic escalation policy. So once an alert comes through, all the on-call users in the schedule will receive that alert within 0 minutes. Within 5 minutes, if it's not acknowledged, the next user in the schedule will receive that alert. And after 10 minutes, everyone on the team is acknowledged. A great thing to do is if you have very specific SLAs, say you need a resolution after a certain amount of time, you can adjust this in order to make sure that, say, if the alert is not acknowledged within 20 minutes, you want to notify a particular user. Say Sean is the manager of this team, you want to notify him after 20 minutes so he can get on someone and make sure that somebody is taking care of that problem so you can hit your SLA. It's just one application, but there, as I mentioned before, Opsgenie is very flexible and there are a lot of different things that you can do. Routing rules also help you in order to route these alerts properly. The escalation policy ensures that people are notified until somebody takes action. But typically, you'll want to route the alert to the team schedule, but you have, again, that flexibility here. Maybe you want to restrict this to time intervals. So during the weekday, people are paying attention all day. You don't need them to be constantly getting alerts and getting overwhelmed. So maybe you want to only restrict this to off hours. So this will be the schedule for the off hours. Or maybe you'd like to do the opposite. It really depends on your particular team and the application, what you're handling. You can also change this so that it matches a specific alert condition. So perhaps you only want to hear about P1 alerts during off hours, and then this routing rule ensures that that's what happens. And you just click update and it populates right here. So that pretty much covers that. Let's go into policies. So alert policies are a global or team-based rule that adds something to the corresponding alert. So for example, if something comes in and the message contains critical, you can ask Opsgenie to always update that priority to P1. Another thing, earlier I put the tag critical within the Statuspage integration, so that way it always will update the status page for an alert that contains critical. So what we can do is call this critical status page policy. Enable policy when created. Continue with the next policy is something that you check off if you have multiple policies and you'd like them all to apply. And so we'll create the alert conditions here. Let's say there's a specific source that you always want the status page to update because you know it's public facing. So let's say source contains AWS. Then change priority to equal critical, and that will ensure that, and then change tag to equal critical, and that will ensure that every time that something occurs within AWS, your status page is updated because we've done this alert policy on the tag here, and we had set up the tagging on the status page side in terms of the integration. So create an enable policy, and that's all set. There are a lot of different things that you can do with alert policies. Some folks always update a priority depending on the alert source. You can also ensure that the priority is updated based on the message. You have a lot of different options here. Notification policies are another common tool that we use. A lot of folks really appreciate the existence of this. This is a team-based rule that allows you to auto restart, delay, suppress, or auto close alerts. A pretty common application is to create an auto close for off hours. So match one or more conditions below. Let's say we don't really need to be notified on off hours for P4 and P5 alerts because they're usually low and informational. So match one or more conditions below. So this means that if alert is received that is P4 or P5 and it's off hours, we're not going to be getting, we can delay that alert until the next morning, the next working hours. So let's say 1700 to 8:30, and then we'll delay suppress. You can, and then you have all these different options within that. Delay notifications until first 8:30, which is what I'm going to select. You can suppress them permanently. You can auto close them. So a lot of times you just want a P5 alert for audit purposes. You can auto close every P5 and then create that policy. Oops, I didn't create a name. So let's call this off hours P4, P5. Definitely name it and enable it, otherwise it won't work. Learn from my mistakes. Okay, that's all set. Sorry, I think the screen locked up there for a moment. So now let's take a look at the reporting and analytics. Sean had mentioned this a bit before. Opsgenie is collecting information for the entire life cycle of the alert. And this really helps you dig in on that information and make decisions to determine operational efficiencies, etc. So one thing that, let's try to get into here, monthly overview report is good because it just gives you a very high level of what's going on in terms of the different teams. So my team, this is of course my demo account, so of course my team is fielding most alerts here. Mean time to acknowledge, mean time to resolve, and the number of alerts created. You can also break that down by hour of day. You can break it down by day, which helps you determine if you want to make some scheduling adjustments, etc. If for whatever reason, for a lot of folks, Monday tends to be a pretty busy day, or what have you, depending on traffic volume, etc. You can determine to add staff that day, etc. But this is just a really great overview. You can also download it as a PDF or a CSV. Another great thing about all of our reports is that you can send them automatically to folks who have Opsgenie and folks who don't. So you do not need to have Opsgenie in order to receive a report. You can also schedule a report to run, and then you can automatically get that sent on a weekly basis. Sorry, this is taking a bit of time to load. My internet is a bit slow at the moment. I think too many people are having video conferences maybe. So, okay, you can give your schedule a name. So let's say I want to report to the CTO, CTO report. And I'll pretend that I'm the CTO in this case. Include a custom message. Hey, here's the overview you asked for. And we'll send the PDF. And we'll do that on a monthly basis, every first of the month at 6 a.m. Perfect. And then you have advanced options as well to use a single column layout, etc. You can choose the time zone and then send test and save. So that report is going to automatically get provided there. So the alert reports are also great because you can determine your noisiest alert source. Notification reports are good as well. The on-call reports is great because you're able to really dig in and see how many hours certain folks are working on call, and that helps you determine if somebody needs a break. So maybe, Mr. Greenleaf here can take some shifts for Sean and Kate because they've been working a lot of hours, and he's a little low on hours, that sort of thing. It helps you make those decisions. And it can also help you determine team performance, etc. So there's a lot of reports to go through, so we're not going to go through them all, but there is a lot of material on the website that you can certainly take a look at. Alert analytics is another key one that I would love to go through with you just briefly, because it gives you an idea of what kind of alerts you're working with, how many you have open or closed, what kind of priority alerts are you handling mostly. And that can be really helpful too in terms of determining resources or determining team performance, etc. And you'll see a lot of the alerts here are from Statuspage. That's due to the integration with Twilio and all of the other external services. So that pretty much covers the high-level demo. I know it was a lot of information in a short period of time, so I don't know if we got a lot of questions.
Yeah, that was great, Kate. There was a bunch of questions. I answered a bunch of them over chat, but one of the topics that came up consistently, I think would be good to talk a little bit more about, was just the customization across the tool. And particularly a lot of people have been asking about just going back to on-call schedules and escalation policies. And obviously there's a million different ways you can do that depending on your own setup, and we could take those offline. But just talking a little bit more, it might be good to just go, I know you already did this, but go through another example of, kind of having a daytime on-call schedule and a nighttime schedule, and then escalating to an escalation policy, or using an escalation policy to go between those two depending on the time of day, or showing a little bit more there. The point of the story for everyone on the line is that it is pretty customizable depending on how many teams you have, the people on those teams, and who needs to be alerted, and whoever's involved.
Yeah, sure. So let me just clear this out and we can start fresh. That probably will be helpful because I know I did go through it really quickly before. Let me delete. So let's just start fresh and pretend this is a brand new team. So essentially what you'll do first once you create your team is you're going to add a rotation. That's the first step. And then you would name the rotation. So for the sake of this example, let's name this rotation work hours. And then we'll have Sean and Cameron do this this can be daily or weekly. So that means that it can either alternate by day. So Sean is the 12th and Cameron is the 13th, or it will rotate. This week is Sean's week and then next week is Cameron's week, or you can do the custom. So in this case, we'll do the custom. We'll say the shift, oops, sorry, I'm having trouble with my internet today. We'll say that the custom shift is 8 hours, and we'll start it on June 12th, and we'll restrict it to time intervals. So, sorry, I meant to do, we'll do week, daily here. And then we'll restrict this to time intervals, so that way it's normal working hours. So let's say that the day starts at 9 and then ends at 5. 1700. So, and for the assumption purposes, we'll assume that the schedule is the same on the weekend, that Sean and Cameron will still alternate, but some companies do it differently. Some companies have different folks working the weekend schedule. Sometimes they have an offshore team working the weekend schedule. It just really depends. But again, this one's named work hours, and we've got Sean. So that's all set up. But then that leaves, of course, a big part of the day where no one's working. So that's when the escalation policy would come in handy, or you could add another rotation. So let's add a second rotation, and we'll call this one off hours. And let's say it's just me. And this will also, or we'll say, well, for now, we'll say it's me, but we'll switch it to weekly. And so let's add someone else. We'll add Brad. So that means I'll handle the first week, Brad will handle the second week. So 1 week on and 1 week off. And this will also be restricted to time intervals. And we'll say it's 1700 to 8:30. And so this is our off hours schedule. So during the day, Sean and Cameron are alternating, but during the off hours, the evening hours, it's myself and Brad who are taking weekly rotations, and then click add. And so naming them something helpful, of course, makes it a lot easier because I can see here the work hours and the off hours. And then if I need a day off, I can hover over and just say, oh, this day I have a commitment, or I've taken this day off. So Brad is going to take over. Why is he not showing up? Oh, because he's in the rotation. Sean will take over, and I'll owe him a coffee for sure. And then that final schedule is shown here. Down here, you can see Sean's taking that day for me. In terms of the escalation policies and routing rules, a common application for routing rules is if it is a P4 or a P5, you route it to no one. And you can restrict that to time intervals as well, but we'll just call this the P5 routing rule. So that means that it's created within Opsgenie, but it's not going to be sent to a person that's going to have to handle it. So it's in your system for auditing purposes, but no one's being woken up in the middle of the night in order to deal with this informational alert, which might be scheduled maintenance a month from now, for example. And then the escalation policies, let's just call this typical. Can add a rule. So if the alert is not acknowledged after 0 minutes, you can we'll notify a team, route that to a team. Let's say Kate's DevOps team. And then you would add that. So that means that after 0 minutes, the team is notified of this. The other thing is perhaps you have someone on your team who is always handling P1s. You have a specialized person doing that, or you want to make sure that they are kept in the loop on those P1s. P1, then route that to, you can route that to Kate's test team, or you can route that to, now the one thing I want to note is it's Kate's test team schedule. This means that it's being routed to the actual schedule. So it will be routed according to who is working and on call. So hopefully that kind of explains the relationship. So essentially, the routing rules determine where it goes from the outset. If you route it to Kate's test team, it's going to go to who's working and on call. The escalation policy will take that and say, if the alert isn't acknowledged after 15 minutes, then we need to notify someone else because whomever is on call is not paying attention and we're not going to hit our SLA. And so then you would save this. And then you can also repeat it until the alert is acknowledged, etc. You have a choice to repeat as many times as you want, or if the escalation requests are repeated and you just automatically close that alert and you can just add. So hopefully highlighting that helps explain the relationship between the routing rules, escalation policies, and on-call schedules a little bit better.
Great, thanks. And there was a bunch of other questions, I think more high level for in this context, and we can take these offline, but we've had questions about different integration types with our API. And in most cases, if you can code it and using the API of the tool that you're trying to integrate with, or for various web errors or different things like that, load times, in most cases, the answer is yes, those will be able to be integrated. And the best case for those is we'll take those offline and we can talk with our customer success team to help you get set up specifically for your instance. Same goes for a couple other questions here about Nagios and New Relic. We've got great integrations out of the box there. And I know integrating with Jira is always an option as well. So long story short, like we've been talking about, you can pretty much set up any kind of integration you can, depending on the technical expertise on your side. And obviously our team is here to help, right, Kate?
Yeah, absolutely. We have 200 pre-built integrations, but like Sean said, essentially we can integrate using API, email, and we can pretty much accept anything that sends JSON or HTTPS. And we do have a video on integrating with Jira software. We also integrate with Jira Server as well. We do not have a video on that just yet, but it might be coming soon, who knows. Another great resource is the community. And from Atlassian.com/community, we have an Opsgenie space in there. We do have a badge challenge this month, which means that if you participate, you get awarded a badge if you follow the rules. But there's also a lot of great folks there who have a lot of knowledge and ideas that are willing to answer questions too. So that's always an option as well.
Great. So with that said, I think we'll wrap up for today. I've got a list of every question that's been asked. So if we didn't get to your question live in the air, if I didn't respond to you in text, don't fear, we're going to get to you soon and make sure that you get the help you need, especially with those more complex questions around setup and integrations and things like that. So with that, we can definitely say goodbye for today. Thanks for joining the webinar, and we will see you next time.